So welcome to today's webinar about the upcoming or already released new major versions of Android and iOS. My name is Jonas Hofer and I'm a mobile security consultant at Nomasis. I'd say I just plow through the whole presentation, and at the end I'll pick up all the questions in the chat, and we'll also open the mic for questions. So without further ado, let's jump into the agenda for today. I'm going to quickly outline the general features that are being introduced in iOS 15 and Android 12, and the new possibilities for device management from an enterprise standpoint for both platforms. Then a quick part about app signing and app distribution, then the challenges and changes that are coming for the MDM systems, Mobile Iron and Intune, and at the end, quick session about device lifecycle management with regards to the versions. So yeah, that's how it looks. From a visual standpoint, I'd say both operating systems are kind of converging on the design philosophy. Say the good thing is they steal the good things about from each other, and it has been like that for the last 5 years, I'd say. And yeah, so iOS was released last week, and I already updated like 3 or 4 devices to iOS 15, and it kind of works out for me, at least for my use cases. We've seen certain apps being incompatible, just and Android 12 is not yet released officially, and it will only be released for certain devices from October 4th, like the Pixel 3 series and above, and selected other Android devices. And I've been running Android 12 beta on a Pixel phone for a couple months already. And we've been testing certain things for customers. And yeah. So which devices are compatible with iOS 15? All of them, all the relevant ones at least. All the devices that have previously been supporting iOS 14 will also be able to update to iOS 15. So dating back to an iPhone 6S like this. And yeah, up to the newest versions. Same goes for iPads. So the original iPad Air is not supported anymore, but it was also not supported on iOS 14, which makes iOS 15 the 5th iteration that was supported on iPhone 6S, for example. This device is now more than 5 years old and still gets the newest version. Regarding release adoptions, I quickly pulled up statistics from StatCounter. This is a company that sells a service for your websites to analyze the traffic, and they also aggregate aggregate this data for for us to look at it. And basically, the data that they gather from all the millions of websites and from which OS versions these visitors are accessing all these websites, so we can have a pretty good picture of the versions that are used in the wild in Switzerland. So it's already filtered by Swiss IP ranges. You can see for Android it takes quite a while for new versions to catch on. Now it's only 3 years from September 2018 to September 2021. And as we can see, Android 11 has only recently caught up over the 42% margin, while there are still more than 10% on the Android 9, Android Pie release. It's quite different for iOS, so new versions catch on a lot faster compared to Android. This is mainly due to the fact that the major version or the OS versions of iOS include everything from feature updates through security fixes and everything. And on Android, the platform is quite different. So the major versions, they are mainly focused on releasing new features, while security patch levels are provided on a monthly, bi-monthly, or 3-month cadence, while the Google Play framework does a lot of the heavy lifting on the device itself and is used by most applications to access functions on the device. And this is updated independent of the device operating system and also WebView components, for example. So there's the question whether Android 9, Android Pie version device with a security patch level from August 2021 should be more secure than an Android 11 device with a patch level from October last year. So it's not really the major version that's relevant for Android. It's more about the security patch level. On iOS, this will also change in the future. So iOS 14 will continue to be supported by Apple and receive patch updates. So you are not, I mean, maybe some of you already saw the update prompt on your iPhones. You can either update to the most recent 14 version, or you can go up to iOS 15. So Apple will now support the recent one for another year. So this means iOS 14 will keep getting security fixes in iOS 14 dot something dot something until iOS 16 will be released next year. But we also, I mean, we recommend to go to the next major version, but for some reasons, it might be beneficial to stay on the iOS 14 release and only get the security fixes. The general features on iOS, it's about notification filtering and muting. So it helps to clean up your notifications. There are lots of multitasking improvements with switching back and forth and side-by-side views and focus mode to enable workers to not be distracted by stuff that they don't want to see. And they have new widgets, and also with the iOS 15 release, a lot of core apps which are kind of baked into the operating system, like Maps, FaceTime, and Weather, and so on, get the huge overhaul. On Android, there are more subtle changes. The new Material U design language is applied throughout the operating system, and you also have a privacy dashboard and more customization options without device manufacturers adding new customization stuff. And note that app and platform services are updated separately. So what are the new features for iOS that you can use on your MDM systems? Going to the settings menu, there was point VPN or device management. This is now consolidated in a device management screen. So end user has all these, everything about device management and VPN in one place. So you might want to review your user documentation and possibly update the screenshots in there if required. Then there's one small change for macOS devices. They will release an Apple configurator for iPhone app, which means you can use macOS devices, MacBooks, that are not DEP enabled in a DEP enrollment way with this Apple configurator iPhone app. So it's a very special case if you deploy macOS devices in your company and they are not DEP enabled. There are new user enrollment features which have yet to be implemented by the MDM vendors. So basically you can go into the settings and say, yeah, I'd also like to access my company data. And you can then log in with your Azure AD credentials, provided user enrollment is set up correctly. So federated identity between the Apple Business Manager and Azure AD. And there are lots of other things like configuration profiles that have been introduced with iOS 15 or improved. Declarative management has also to be implemented by MDM vendors. Shared iPads, new update management possibilities, and required MDM app. So all the last 6 points have their own slide. So I'll continue with these. These are the new device management features that we can use in the configuration profiles, and I would only point to 3 of them. The extensible SSO setting, so the native Kerberos feature for SSO, you can there now provide a preferred key distribution center. And a new restriction was introduced, the managed pasteboard feature, which manages the copy paste feature on iOS. And yeah, more to that later, also for the declarative management. So managed pasteboard. On iOS, in the restriction policies, you have these allow open from managed to unmanaged, and vice versa, allow open from unmanaged to managed restrictions in the restriction policy. Now with the managed pasteboard setting, these features are respected. So if you set to block managed to unmanaged, so for example, you have the business app and you tap open in and you cannot choose a private app there. If you set the managed pasteboard setting to true, you cannot copy paste from corporate apps to private apps anymore. But this is not turned on by default. So you have to intentionally deploy this setting if you want to use it. As a quick reminder, in 2018, they also introduced a new setting regarding contacts. So the restriction managed unmanaged was introduced, I think, in iOS 6 or 7, like a long time ago. And they have subsequently been adding new options that should respect this whole managed unmanaged separation. And in 2018, Apple opted to default this to false. Therefore, when you didn't do anything, basically as an MDM administrator, the corporate contacts as managed contacts couldn't be accessed anymore by private apps like WhatsApp. And some of our customers immediately wanted to enable this again because it's what their users want and what their security approved. But others said, yes, it's great that Apple introduced this feature and we would like to have it on default. So not for unmanaged apps, not to be able to access managed contacts. And yeah, in contrast, the new feature with the pasteboard is not turned on by default. So you'll have to do something to enable this. About the declarative device management, I'll only quickly say what's about. Basically, you kind of define a blueprint for the device that it should do more on the device without bothering the MDM servers. So this is not really something that provides new functions for users or for admins. It's more under the hood of the MDM protocol. Then shared iPads for business. Yeah, this feature has been introduced a year ago, and we have now some deployments with customers that use these shared iPads. And it's now also possible to not require a sign-in. So to only have a temporary session, an anonymous session, instead of signing in. And you can now also set the temporary session timeout and the user session timeout. So like with shared iPads in general, you'll have to use managed Apple IDs and federate your Apple Business Manager with Azure Active Directory to be able to use shared iPads at all. But now you have the possibility, for example, in a store to sign in temporarily if you just want to look something up. But then if you want to use the iPad to have a discussion with the customer and find out more and send him an email or something, then you can quickly sign in with your real user account and then end the session afterwards. Regarding update management, you can now have devices auto update within an iOS version. So as I said in the beginning, you can keep your devices on iOS 14 and have them automatically update to newer iOS 14 patch versions, but not the major step up to 15. And this was retroactively applied or made possible for iOS 9 and later. So this is not dependent on the iOS version, but on the MDM management stack. And it's also possible now to defer updates for a couple of weeks and that people can postpone them until they have time to install the app. But as soon as this period of time is over, they are forced to install the new version. But as all update management settings on iOS, it's for supervised devices only. And this the one feature above, certain MDM vendors already have it on their roadmap, like for example, Ivanti. They say they will release a core version that supports this in Q1 2022. And yeah, there are these are the details about the feature that I mentioned already, with iOS 14 being available for updating. And yeah, why doesn't Apple want people to upgrade to iOS 15 is a valid question. I don't really get it, but yeah, I'd say it's the reason number two, because you might want to keep your fleet on a stable version, and there might be reasons why you don't want to go to the next or the newest major version, but also make sure that your current iOS 14, in this case, version is patched. So earlier you would have to kind of block software updates altogether, but now it's also possible to just stay on the same major version and not upgrade to the next major version, which is of course a big security improvement, except in contrast to just disabling updates altogether. And yeah, there's also a new feature for non-supervised devices to have the user consent to a required app during the device registration, so that the user does not accidentally kind of gloss over the setting pop-up that says we would like to install the company portal app or the mobile at work client and so on. So this, yeah, it's mainly a feature that should, yeah, alleviate some support cases in the future. For Android 12, there are new password complexity settings, and there's a new user workflow to make it easier for the user to choose an appropriate passcode. And they also have, the users have additional privacy controls for work profile apps. So for example, a Teams app inside of the work profile can be restricted from using camera or microphone from the user if the user chooses to do so. And there are also platform privacy improvements. So if the device is only registered as a work profile device, so the user owns the device and there's just a profile on top coming from the company, the MDM system, Intune or whatever, don't have access to any hardware identifiers. These hardware identifiers are replaced with an enrollment-specific ID, and yeah, which also remains stable across factory resets to track it. But it's not that you can see anything about the hardware itself. There's a small improvement regarding Wi-Fi configurations, which helps troubleshooting in MDM systems, whether the Wi-Fi profile was deployed correctly or something like that. iOS app signing, app distribution. In order for in-house apps, so with an Apple Enterprise Developer account, signed apps, they require to be re-signed. Which requires Xcode 13, which requires macOS 11.3 or higher. Just to be aware, App Store apps are not affected, or their respective developers should have been doing this already. And also the custom App Store apps are also not affected. It's just for these organizations that chose to deploy enterprise signed apps in their environment. So now about Mobile Iron and Android 12. So Email Plus is the only outstanding app that is not compatible with Android 12. And it should have been released today, or yeah, I'd say today, I don't know, Eastern time, so which will be a couple minutes later or hours. And there's two small details regarding Android 12 split screen functions and Wi-Fi settings in kiosk mode. But yeah, it's not really that common to have these features in use anyway. And about Mobile Iron and iOS, Mobile Iron Core supports iOS 15. And just that you are aware, 11.0, I'd say they start supporting iOS 15 with Core 11.0, but 11.0 is already end of support later in November. So we recommend to update to Core 11.2 or higher. The Mobile Iron apps like Mobile at Work and Tunnel, they have also been updated to support iOS 15, and these are the versions that are compatible. There are small issues with Docs at Work and Web at Work, especially regarding file handling things. So I'd say for most organizations, this is not really a huge problem, but if you have Docs at Work or Web at Work deployed in your organization and rely heavily on it, maybe reach out to us, then we can check whether you are affected or help with mitigation. And yeah, one small thing, if we deploy an Exchange setting, so an email setting for native email on iOS, there might be a privacy pop-up window that the user can skip or accept. On Intune, we found out that on iOS 15, a proxy POC setting, which defines the way where the device should connect to get to the internet, basically only supports 443, and port 80 is not supported anymore. And Microsoft apps now require iOS 14 or higher. So Teams, Outlook, and all the other Office apps, they require iOS 14 now. This is also true, of course, for devices that are not registered with Intune or registered on Mobile Iron. And same goes for Android app protection policies. They require Android 9 and higher. Regarding device lifecycle management, we have the challenge that we have to constantly review iOS and Android versions, and for Android also security patch levels. And in the end, we always have to assess the impact on our device fleet. We have to communicate to the end users or their superiors. And in the end, we have to adapt and enforce the policies that we designed or configured. One small example from a customer where we did this in spring for Android. They have an internal shop where you can order Android devices, and we checked whether they have to be replaced or to which patch level that we can adapt our settings without excluding a huge number of devices. So in the end, it's you have to check that you don't inactivate the whole fleet of yours by defining a patch level that is too high. In the end, you also have to keep the patch level fairly recent just for security reasons. This is also something we can help with to analyze which settings would make sense in your environment. And the same goes for iOS. So we recommend to only allow 2 major versions, which means now we would recommend for iOS to only support iOS 14 and 15, and always switch after the new iOS releases are introduced. For these organizations that use supervised devices, iOS devices, we would recommend to deploy an update policy so that the devices are updated automatically. And of course, always find the devices that need to be replaced, and make sure to notify people that are able to upgrade their devices but haven't done so yet. Regarding Android, we recommend to also include the security patch levels in your device lifecycle planning, not just the major versions. As I said in the beginning, an Android 9 device with a patch level from last month, much more secure compared to an Android 11 device with a security patch from last year. And have some devices ready to test, or I'd say buy a device that is representative of your fleet. I'd say if you only have Samsung devices in your fleet, buy a Samsung device to test the new versions.